My coworker sent me a text. Delete everything. Leave the building now. Don't use the elevator. I asked what was happening. Her reply said, I just saw your name on the list. When I reached the lobby, the text came through at 2:38 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon while I was sitting in my cubicle on the 14th floor of Meridian Financial Technologies, eating a turkey sandwich and reviewing quarterly projections like I'd done every Thursday for the past 4 years. My phone buzzed once, then twice, then 3 times in rapid succession, the kind of urgent notification pattern that makes your stomach clench before you even read the words. Megan Holloway, senior analyst, 2 cubicles over, the woman who'd trained me when I first joined the company and who'd become something like an older sister over the years, had sent me 3 messages that would change everything. The first said, delete everything now. The second said, leave the building, don't use the elevator. The third said, I'm serious, Daniel, go now. I stared at my phone for maybe 5 seconds, turkey sandwich suspended halfway to my mouth, trying to process what I was reading. Megan wasn't the type for pranks. She was 53 years old, had been with the company for 19 years, wore sensible shoes, and kept a photo of her grandkids on her desk. She didn't send cryptic warnings in the middle of a workday for entertainment. I typed back a single word. What? Her reply came instantly. I just saw your name on the list. Get out. I'll explain later. Trust me. I'd been working at Meridian Financial Technologies for exactly 4 years, 3 months, and 11 days when that text arrived. Started as a junior financial analyst fresh out of grad school, worked my way up to senior analyst with a corner cubicle and a view of downtown Chicago that I'd earned through 14-hour days and weekends spent debugging financial models while my friends were at bars. The company occupied floors 12 through 16 of the lakefront tower, a glass and steel monument to corporate ambition that gleamed in the morning sun and cast long shadows over Michigan Avenue in the evenings. We managed investment portfolios for institutional clients, pension funds, university endowments, municipal governments, the kind of money that came with serious responsibility and even more serious regulation. My boss was Richard Thornton, chief financial officer, a man I'd admired for 3.5 years before I started noticing things that didn't add up. Silver hair, perfectly styled, tailored suits that probably cost more than my monthly rent, the kind of confident handshake that made clients feel like their millions were in capable hands. He'd mentored me, promoted me, told me I had a future at Meridian that could take me all the way to the executive suite. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was admitting that I'd built my career on a foundation of lies. The red flags had started 6 months ago, subtle things I'd rationalized away, because acknowledging them meant acknowledging that everything I thought I knew was wrong. Discrepancies in the quarterly reports that disappeared by the time final versions were submitted, client account numbers that didn't match our internal databases, late-night meetings in Thornton's corner office with people I didn't recognize, meetings that ended abruptly whenever anyone approached. I'd asked about it once, casually, mentioned to Thornton that I'd noticed some inconsistencies in the Davidson Municipal Pension Fund account. He'd smiled that paternal smile, told me not to worry about it, said the accounting team was handling a minor reconciliation issue. I'd accepted that explanation because he was the CFO, because he'd been doing this for 25 years, because questioning him felt like questioning gravity. But the discrepancies kept appearing, and I kept a private file on my personal laptop at home, screenshots and notes and timestamps, telling myself it was just professional diligence, just making sure I understood the systems I was working with. I didn't know that file would save my life, or at least save the life I'd built from complete destruction. I didn't know that Thornton had already decided I was going to take the fall for everything he'd done. I grabbed my phone, my wallet, my keys, left the sandwich on my desk, left my laptop open to the quarterly projections I'd never finished reviewing. My heart was pounding as I walked toward the stairwell, trying to look casual, trying not to attract attention from the 43 other employees on the 14th floor who were typing and talking and living their normal Thursday afternoons. Don't use the elevator, Megan had said. Why not the elevator? What was happening in this building that made the elevator dangerous? I pushed through the stairwell door, started descending, my footsteps echoing off concrete walls painted institutional gray. 14 floors is a lot of stairs. By the time I hit the 10th floor landing, I was breathing hard. By the 8th floor, I heard voices above me, men's voices, urgent and purposeful. I stopped, pressed myself against the wall, listened. They were talking about securing the perimeter, about making sure no one left before the sweep was complete. I recognized one voice, Frank Delaney, head of building security, a former Marine who'd always been friendly with me in the lobby. The other voice I didn't know, but it had the clipped efficiency of law enforcement. I started moving faster, taking the stairs 2 at a time, my dress shoes slipping on the concrete, my tie flapping against my chest. Whatever list Megan had seen, whatever was happening, I needed to be outside this building before those voices caught up with me. I burst through the lobby doors at 2:51 p.m., 13 minutes after Megan's first text. The lobby of Lakefront Tower was all marble and glass, a cathedral to capitalism with a security desk in the center and turnstiles leading to the elevators. There were 4 men in suits standing by the main entrance, not building security, something else. FBI, maybe, or private investigators, the kind of people who wore earpieces and stood with their hands clasped in front of them like they were guarding a dignitary. I saw Frank Delaney behind the security desk, and when our eyes met, his expression shifted from recognition to something I couldn't read. Warning? Pity? He looked away quickly, pretended to study his computer screen. I walked toward the side exit, the one that led to the parking garage, trying to keep my pace normal, trying not to run. One of the suits by the main entrance spoke into his earpiece. Male, dark hair, gray suit, heading toward the parking structure. I ran, pushed through the side door, sprinted down the corridor toward the garage entrance, my footsteps echoing off polished concrete. Behind me, I heard the suits mobilizing, their dress shoes slapping against the floor in pursuit. The garage door was ahead, 30 feet, 20, 10. I hit it at full speed, burst into the dim fluorescent lighting of the underground structure, and saw my car, a black Lexus IS that I'd bought when I got my last promotion, 3 rows over. I ran for it, fumbling for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely press the unlock button. I made it to my car, threw myself into the driver's seat, jammed the key into the ignition. The engine roared to life just as the garage door burst open behind me, and 2 of the suits appeared, one of them already reaching for something on his belt. I threw the car into reverse, backed out of my space with a screech of tires that echoed through the concrete structure, shifted into drive, and floored it toward the exit ramp. In my rearview mirror, I saw them running, one speaking into his earpiece, the other pulling out his phone. But they weren't fast enough. I hit the exit ramp at 40 miles an hour, merged onto the street without stopping, and disappeared into the Thursday afternoon traffic of downtown Chicago before they could coordinate a pursuit. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. My heart felt like it was trying to escape my chest. I had no idea what I was running from, no idea what list my name was on, no idea why federal agents or whoever those men were had tried to intercept me in my own office building. I just knew that Megan had warned me, that I'd trusted her instinct, and that whatever was happening at Meridian Financial Technologies was bad enough that running had been the only option. I drove for 20 minutes without destination, weaving through traffic, checking my mirrors compulsively, before I finally pulled into the parking lot of a coffee shop on the north side, a small independent place I'd never been to before. My phone had been buzzing continuously since I'd left the building, messages from Megan, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize, and one notification that made my blood run cold. An email from Meridian HR, subject line, immediate termination and legal hold. I parked in the back corner of the lot, killed the engine, and sat there staring at my phone while my heart rate slowly returned to something approaching normal. The email was from Patricia Keene, Director of Human Resources, a woman I'd interacted with maybe 3 times in 4 years. Mr. Reeves, she wrote, your employment with Meridian Financial Technologies has been terminated effective immediately due to your involvement in unauthorized financial transactions totaling $4.2 million. You are hereby instructed to preserve all documents, communications, and electronic records related to your employment. A legal hold has been placed on your personnel file. Federal investigators have been notified. Please contact our legal department at your earliest convenience. I read it 3 times, each time hoping the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. $4.2 million in unauthorized transactions. I hadn't authorized any transactions, unauthorized or otherwise. That wasn't even my job. I was an analyst, not a trader. I called Megan. She answered on the first ring, her voice low and rushed like she was hiding somewhere. Daniel, are you out of the building? I'm at a coffee shop on the north side. Megan, what the hell is happening? I just got an email saying I'm being accused of stealing $4 million. It's worse than that. She was speaking in barely more than a whisper. I was in Thornton's office delivering a report when I saw a document on his desk, a list of 6 names with dollar amounts next to them. Your name was third, $4.2 million. I recognized the other names too, all mid-level analysts, all people who've been with the company less than 5 years. What do you mean dollar amounts? What kind of list? I think they're framing you. All of you. Thornton and whoever he's working with, they've done something, moved money somewhere, and they're setting up 6 junior employees to take the blame. My stomach dropped. Not just suspicion now, not just paranoia. Confirmation. Megan, I've been keeping records. Things I noticed that didn't add up. I thought I was being paranoid, but I saved screenshots, emails, discrepancies in the client accounts. Do you have them somewhere safe? Not on any company device? Personal laptop at my apartment? Go there now. Get that laptop. Then get somewhere they can't find you. I'll send you everything I can access from here, but Daniel, I heard Thornton talking on the phone before I left. He said the FBI is executing search warrants tonight. Your apartment is probably on the list. I drove to my apartment in Lincoln Park, a 1-bedroom place on the 3rd floor of a brownstone that I'd loved for its exposed brick and its proximity to good restaurants. But as I turned onto my street, I saw them. 2 black SUVs parked outside my building, men in suits on the sidewalk, one of them talking to my landlord, while another disappeared through the front door. I kept driving, didn't slow down, didn't look back. My laptop, my evidence, my only proof that I wasn't part of whatever Thornton had done was inside that apartment, and I couldn't get to it. I circled the block twice, my mind racing, before I remembered the fire escape. The back of the building had an old iron fire escape that connected to my bedroom window, the window I never locked because it stuck in the frame, and I'd been meaning to fix it for 2 years. If I could get into the alley without being seen, if the fire escape was still accessible, if the men in suits hadn't already posted someone in the back. A lot of ifs. But I didn't have other options. I parked 3 blocks away, walked through a neighboring building's courtyard to access the alley behind my street, and approached my building from the rear. The fire escape was there, rusted iron ladders zigzagging up the back of the brownstone. No one was watching it. I climbed. The fire escape groaned under my weight, decades-old bolts protesting every step, but it held. My bedroom window was on the 3rd floor, and when I reached it, I could hear voices inside my apartment. Men moving through my space, opening drawers, shuffling papers. I pressed myself against the brick wall, out of sight from the window, and listened. "Laptop isn't here. He must have taken it." That was a voice I didn't recognize. "Check the closet. People hide things in shoeboxes, under floorboards." Another voice, deeper, more authoritative. "We have authorization to execute a thorough search. Take your time." I thought about my laptop, tried to remember where I'd left it that morning. On my desk in the living room? No, I'd moved it last night. Had been working in bed on some personal emails before I fell asleep. It was under my pillow. Or it had been. I inched closer to the window, peered through the gap in the curtains. 2 men in dark suits were methodically dismantling my living room, pulling books off shelves, emptying desk drawers onto the floor. My bedroom door was closed. They hadn't gotten to the bedroom yet. I had maybe 5 minutes. I pushed open the window, slowly, praying it wouldn't squeak. It stuck halfway, just like it always did, and I had to wedge my fingers under the frame and force it up another 6 inches to create enough space to climb through. I slid into my bedroom as quietly as I could, dropped to the floor, reached under my pillow. The laptop was there. Cool aluminum casing, sleeping peacefully while my life collapsed around it. I grabbed it, stuffed it under my suit jacket, and turned back to the window just as my bedroom door started to open. I didn't think. I dove through the window, caught the fire escape railing, nearly lost my grip and fell 3 stories, then scrambled down the ladder so fast I tore the palm of my hand on rusted iron. Above me, I heard shouting, "He's on the fire escape! Go around!" But I was already dropping the last 8 feet to the alley, already running, already disappearing between buildings while federal agents coordinated pursuit above me. I'd gotten my laptop. I'd gotten my evidence. Now I just needed somewhere safe to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with it. I ended up at Kevin Okonkwo's apartment in Wicker Park. Kevin was 34 years old, worked in IT security for a competing financial firm, and had been my roommate in grad school before we'd both gone corporate. He was also the only person I knew who could look at digital forensics and tell me whether what I had was actually useful or just wishful thinking. He answered his door in sweatpants and a gaming headset, took one look at my torn suit and bleeding hand, and said, "What did you do?" I didn't do anything. That's the problem. He let me in, closed the door, locked it. His apartment was a mess of computer equipment and takeout containers, 3 monitors on his desk displaying various security dashboards, a couch buried under laundry he'd never gotten around to folding. I sat down in the only clear chair and told him everything. The text from Megan, the men in suits, the email accusing me of stealing $4.2 million, the fire escape. He listened without interrupting, then held out his hand. "Give me the laptop." For the next 4 hours, Kevin worked while I paced and checked my phone and tried not to have a complete breakdown. Megan had sent me 3 encrypted emails containing documents she'd managed to access before the building went into lockdown. Internal memos about client account restructuring, authorization forms with forged signatures, a spreadsheet tracking what she called redistribution events across 6 different institutional accounts. The Davidson Municipal Pension Fund was on there. So was the Henley University Endowment, the Bright Futures Teachers Retirement System, and 3 others. Collectively, those accounts represented $340 million in managed assets. And according to the documents Megan had sent, $18.6 million of that had been systematically siphoned over the past 18 months. "Okay," Kevin said around 8 p.m., turning his chair to face me. He'd ordered Thai food at some point, and empty containers littered his desk. "I've gone through your files. You were right to be suspicious, and you were very right to save what you saved." "What do you mean?" "These screenshots you took, the ones showing discrepancies between internal reports and client-facing statements, they're time-stamped. Metadata shows they came from your work computer, but the account access logs in the company's system show that you never had permission to view those accounts. Someone was accessing them using credentials that looked like yours, but weren't actually authorized to you." I stared at him. "Someone was using my identity to access accounts I shouldn't have been able to see?" "Not exactly. Someone created a shadow profile, a duplicate set of credentials linked to your employee ID, but with elevated permissions. Everything they did using that profile looked like you did it. But you never had the actual access." Kevin pulled up a diagram on one of his monitors. "Here's how I think it worked. Thornton, or whoever was running this, needed fall guys, people who could be blamed when the scheme eventually collapsed or got audited. So they created duplicate credential sets for 6 junior employees, including you, used those credentials to authorize transfers, access client accounts, generate the paper trail that would make it look like you guys were the thieves. But I have screenshots showing I noticed the discrepancies. Doesn't that prove I wasn't part of it?" "It proves you noticed something was wrong. What we need is proof that you couldn't have been part of it. Where were you on March 15th at 3:47 a.m.? I thought about it. March 15th? I was in Seattle visiting my brother. His wife just had a baby. Perfect. Because according to these logs, your shadow credentials were used to authorize a transfer of $890,000 from the Henley University endowment at exactly that time. If we can prove you were physically in Seattle while your credentials were being used in Chicago, we've got proof the credentials were stolen. Kevin grinned, the kind of grin that said he lived for this stuff. This is actually really elegant, from a technical standpoint. Horrible and criminal, but elegant. They built a completely parallel paper trail. Everything points to you and the other 5 analysts. Nothing points to whoever actually did it. We worked through the night. I called my brother, woke him up at 1 a.m. Pacific time, and asked him to send me photos from the week I'd visited. Anything with timestamps showing I was in Seattle. He sent 37 pictures, including several with geotagged metadata proving I was at Swedish Medical Center on March 15th when his daughter was born. Kevin cross-referenced my credit card statements, which I accessed through my banking app, showing charges at Seattle restaurants and hotels on dates that corresponded with suspicious activity in my shadow credentials. By 3 a.m., we had a timeline proving that on at least 7 occasions, my credentials had been used to authorize transactions while I was demonstrably elsewhere. This is good, Kevin said, rubbing his eyes. But it's defensive. It proves you didn't do it. It doesn't prove who did. Megan's documents mention authorization codes. Each transfer required 2 approvals. If my shadow credentials were one approval, who was the other? Kevin pulled up the spreadsheet Megan had sent. Let me cross-reference. He typed for a while, ran some queries, pulled data from 3 different sources. Then he sat back and whistled. Richard Thornton. His credentials were the second authorization on every single transfer. Every one. 18 months of stolen money, and his name is on all of it. So why frame junior analysts? Why not just disappear with the money? Because he wasn't planning to disappear. He was planning to get caught, or rather, to let the scheme get caught in a way that pointed to someone else. Probably got nervous that auditors were getting close. So he accelerated the timeline, created the list your friend saw, and called in the FBI himself. The pieces were starting to fit together, a nightmare jigsaw puzzle of corporate betrayal. Thornton had been stealing for 18 months, skimming from client accounts, probably moving the money offshore through a series of shell companies. When he sensed the auditors closing in, he'd created a cover story. 6 junior analysts, all with shadow credentials that made them look guilty, all ready to be sacrificed to federal investigators. He'd probably expected us to lawyer up, deny everything, and spend years in court while he quietly disappeared to some country without extradition treaties. What he hadn't expected was Megan seeing the list, hadn't expected me to run before they could arrest me, hadn't expected that I'd been keeping records for 6 months because something felt wrong. What do we do now? I asked. We need a lawyer, Kevin said. A good one. Someone who specializes in federal financial crimes and can present this evidence without getting it thrown out on procedural grounds. I called Jonathan Mercer at 7 a.m. on Friday morning. He was a partner at Whitfield Mercer and Associates, a law firm that specialized in white-collar criminal defense, and I'd found him through a desperate Google search at 4 a.m. while Kevin was running forensic analysis on my shadow credentials. His receptionist said he was booked solid for the next 3 weeks. I said I was a Meridian Financial Technologies employee being framed for an $18.6 million fraud by my CFO, and I had proof. He called me back in 4 minutes. We met at his office in the Loop at 9 a.m. Jonathan was 58 years old, silver temples, the kind of gravitas that came from 30 years of defending people in situations exactly like mine. He listened to my story, reviewed the evidence Kevin had compiled, read through the documents Megan had sent. When he finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. You understand the position you're in, he said. It wasn't a question. The FBI has a warrant for your arrest. They believe you stole $4 million. Running from them yesterday made you look guilty. I know. But this evidence changes things. If we can authenticate the metadata showing your credentials were used while you were demonstrably elsewhere, if we can prove the shadow credential system exists, and if we can establish that Thornton's authorization codes are on every single suspicious transaction, we have a strong case for your innocence and an even stronger case against him. Jonathan made calls while I sat in his conference room drinking coffee that tasted like anxiety and exhaustion. At 11:14 a.m., he came back with news. I've been in contact with the FBI field office. They're willing to meet with us at 2 p.m. to review your evidence. If what you're showing me holds up to their forensic analysis, they'll shift their investigation from you to Thornton. What about the other 5 people on the list? The other analysts being framed? Once we establish the pattern of shadow credentials, their cases will be reviewed as well. But right now, Mr. Reeves, you need to focus on your own situation. You're the one with evidence. You're the one who can blow this open. At 2 p.m., I walked into the FBI field office in downtown Chicago with Jonathan beside me. The building was all institutional efficiency, metal detectors and concrete and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. We were met by Special Agent Lisa Brennan, 17 years with the Bureau, Financial Crimes Division, a woman in her late 40s with short gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen every lie people could tell. She didn't smile when she shook my hand. Mr. Reeves, you know you're the subject of an active investigation. That's why we're here. I have evidence that I've been framed, and I have evidence identifying the actual perpetrator. The meeting lasted 4 hours. I walked them through everything. The discrepancies I'd noticed over 6 months, the screenshots I'd saved, the shadow credential system Kevin had discovered, the alibi evidence proving I couldn't have authorized transactions while I was in Seattle watching my niece be born. Kevin had provided detailed technical documentation explaining how the shadow profiles worked, how they were created, and how they were used to generate a false paper trail. Agent Brennan's team verified the metadata on my files, confirmed that the timestamps were authentic, and ran their own analysis on the credential logs I'd provided. At 5:47 p.m., Brennan looked up from her laptop and said, "This is credible." I exhaled for what felt like the first time in 2 days. The shadow credential system you've described matches anomalies we noticed in our initial analysis, but couldn't explain. We thought they were database errors. Now I understand what we were looking at. She closed her laptop, looked at me directly. "Mr. Reeves, the warrant for your arrest is being suspended pending further investigation. You're not cleared yet, but you're also not our primary suspect anymore. Richard Thornton is." The next 72 hours were a blur of interviews, depositions, and forensic analysis. The FBI executed a new search warrant on Thornton's home on Saturday morning and found $340,000 in cash hidden in a wall safe, along with documentation for 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands containing a collective $14.2 million. They found emails on his personal laptop coordinating with 2 other Meridian executives, Chief Operating Officer William Ashford and Vice President of Client Services Gregory Park, discussing what they called the redistribution project and referring to the 6 junior analysts as insurance policies. They found a burner phone with text messages planning the timing of the FBI tip that had triggered the original investigation against me and the other analysts. Thornton had called in the tip himself, had told the FBI that he'd discovered evidence of fraud by junior employees, had positioned himself as the concerned whistleblower exposing corruption in his own company. He'd expected to be a hero. Instead, he'd given the FBI a paper trail that led directly to his own crimes. Irony doesn't begin to describe it. On Monday morning, I sat in Agent Brennan's office and watched the arrest footage on her computer. Richard Thornton, silver hair now disheveled, tailored suit now wrinkled from a weekend in federal custody, being led out of the FBI field office in handcuffs. William Ashford behind him, then Gregory Park. 3 executives who had stolen $18.6 million from pension funds and university endowments, from teachers and municipal workers and students, and had planned to let 6 innocent people go to prison for it. "The other 5 analysts have been notified," Brennan said. "Their arrest warrants have been canceled. We'll be conducting interviews with each of them over the next few days, but based on your evidence and what we found at Thornton's residence, I don't anticipate any charges against them." "What about Megan Holloway? She's the one who warned me. She's the one who sent me the documents." "Ms. Holloway has been cooperating with our investigation since Saturday. She's not facing any charges. In fact, she's being credited as a key witness." I leaned back in my chair, felt something loosen in my chest. What happens now? Now we build the federal case. Thornton, Ashford, and Park are facing charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The evidence you provided will be central to the prosecution. 2 weeks later, I testified before a federal grand jury. 3 hours of questions about shadow credentials and authorization codes and what I'd seen over 6 months of growing suspicion. The grand jury returned indictments against all 3 executives. 18 counts of wire fraud, 12 counts of securities fraud, 6 counts of identity theft, 1 for each analyst they'd framed, and 1 count of conspiracy to obstruct justice. Total potential sentences: 85 years for Thornton, 62 years for Ashford, 58 years for Park. The financial news covered it extensively. Meridian executives arrested in massive fraud scheme. CFO and 2 others charged with stealing $18.6 million. Junior analysts cleared after evidence reveals frame job. I watched the coverage from Kevin's apartment, where I'd been staying since the FBI released my own apartment from investigation. Saw Thornton's perp walk replayed on 3 different networks. Saw analysts I'd worked with being interviewed outside the lakefront tower, talking about how shocked they were, how they never would have suspected. Saw my own name mentioned as the person whose evidence had broken the case open. Megan called me on a Wednesday evening, 3 weeks after everything had started. "They offered me a promotion," she said, "Director of Internal Compliance, basically asking me to help rebuild the systems that Thornton corrupted. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to burn that whole building to the ground, but part of me thinks someone needs to stay and fix it. Someone who actually cares about doing the right thing. You saved my life, Megan. You saw that list and you texted me within 60 seconds. If you hadn't done that, I'd be in federal custody right now, trying to prove my innocence from inside a prison cell. I just did what anyone would do." "No, you didn't. You did what a good person would do. There's a difference." She was quiet for a moment. "Take care of yourself, Daniel. Whatever you decide to do next, make sure it's something that makes you happy. You too, Megan. And if you take that job, you're going to fix that company. I know you will." I didn't go back to Meridian. Couldn't. Not after everything that had happened. Jonathan helped me negotiate a settlement with the company. $820,000 for wrongful termination and defamation, plus a confidentiality clause that I didn't sign because I wanted the right to tell my story. Meridian's board of directors, scrambling to contain the PR disaster, agreed to every term. They wanted this over. They wanted to pretend it had never happened. I wanted people to know the truth. 6 months later, I was working for a nonprofit financial literacy organization, teaching high school students in underserved communities how to manage money, avoid predatory lending, and understand the financial systems that would shape their lives. It paid about a quarter of what Meridian had paid me. It was the best job I'd ever had. Thornton pleaded guilty to 12 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy, sentenced to 14 years in federal prison, ordered to pay $23.4 million in restitution. Ashford got 9 years, Park got 7. The money they'd stolen was recovered from the offshore accounts and returned to the pension funds and endowments they'd victimized. The teachers would get their retirement money. The municipal workers would get their pensions. The university would get its endowment back. A year after it all ended, I got a letter. Not an email, a physical letter, handwritten on prison stationery. Richard Thornton, Federal Correctional Institution, Pekin, Illinois. I almost threw it away without reading it. Almost. But curiosity won out. Daniel, the letter said, I know you have no reason to read this, and less reason to respond. But I wanted you to know that I understand now what I did. Not just the stealing. The stealing was greed, pure and simple, and I'm paying for it. But the framing. Choosing 6 people who trusted me, who worked hard, who had done nothing wrong, and deciding that their lives were acceptable collateral damage for my escape. That was something else. That was evil. I convinced myself it wasn't personal, that you were just names on a spreadsheet, variables in an equation. I told myself that good lawyers would eventually clear you, that the truth would come out, that the worst-case scenario was a few years of inconvenience before justice prevailed. I was lying to myself. I knew exactly what I was doing. I knew that being accused of a federal crime would destroy careers, relationships, mental health. I knew that even if you were eventually exonerated, the accusation would follow you forever. And I did it anyway, because I was more afraid of prison than I was of being the kind of person who destroys innocent lives. You saved yourself. I watched the trial coverage, read the depositions, and I know that if you hadn't kept those records, if you hadn't run when Megan warned you, if you hadn't had the presence of mind to climb a fire escape and retrieve a laptop from under your pillow while federal agents searched your apartment, you would be where I am now. And I would be on a beach somewhere, spending money that wasn't mine, trying not to think about the people I'd sacrificed. I read the letter 3 times, then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer with the settlement paperwork and the newspaper clippings about the trial. I didn't respond. Some letters don't deserve responses. Some apologies come too late and mean too little. Some people ask for forgiveness knowing they'll never receive it, hoping that the asking itself provides some kind of absolution. It doesn't. What absolution there was, I found in the classroom where I taught financial literacy to kids who reminded me of myself at that age, hungry and ambitious and completely unaware of how the world actually worked. I found it in the knowledge that I'd told the truth when it mattered, that I'd fought back when running would have been easier, that I'd refused to be collateral damage in someone else's equation. Thornton had put my name on a list. He'd decided I was acceptable losses, a variable to be sacrificed, a junior analyst who could be destroyed to protect his escape route. But I wasn't on that list anymore. I'd written my own name on a different one. The list of people who notice when something is wrong, who save the screenshots and keep the records and trust their instincts even when trusting seems paranoid. The list of people who run when they need to and fight when they must and refuse to accept destruction they didn't earn. The list of people who survive. Megan's text had said, I just saw your name on the list. She'd been right. My name had been on a list, just not the one Thornton intended. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.